The league, players and teams have raised over $145 million and built more than 525 places where families can live, learn and play around the world. In London, local children were given a basketball clinic by some of the game's biggest stars.
1, 2, 3.
Of course, both teams will certainly be looking for victories in the back-to-back games, but you can't help thinking that this is probably a trip that the players could do without in the middle of an 82-game season. This event, though, is not about the matchup on the court. It's about basketball looking for new markets. And if the sellout crowds in London are anything to go by, they might just be getting somewhere. I'm Ashley House at the O2 Arena in London.
And that's all your sport for me, Darren.
Sana, thank you very much indeed. You're watching Al Jazeera. We're bringing you continued coverage of protests taking place across the Arab world. In northern Yemen, it's reported at least 2 people have been killed and another 7 wounded after Shia Muslims say the military fired rockets at anti-government protests in Amran province. There have also been protests in the capital, Sana'a. Our correspondent Hashim Halbara joins us on the phone now. Hashim, just tell us what's been going on the streets of the capital.
Well, we have 2 huge gatherings at the same time. One on the Tahrir Square where thousands of government supporters took to the streets, denouncing the protesters, saying that they're dragging the nation into chaos and anarchy. At the same time now, I'm with the protesters off the campus of the university where thousands gathered after the Friday prayer. They're saying that they will continue the fight and that they would like to push for dramatic change in the country, including the departure of President Ali Abdullah Saleh and his political elite.
And we know that President Saleh had made an offer to form a new unity government, but that's not been enough to stop the protest, though, has it, Hashim?
Absolutely. They feel like Ali Abdullah Saleh is trying to outmaneuver them by proposing different alternatives for an exit strategy, but he has slammed all attempts to resign within 6 months from now, saying that he remains president and that his term comes to an end in 2013, and that only then he will be able to say farewell to power.
All right, Hashim Halbara there in the Yemeni capital, Sana'a. Hashim, thank you very much indeed. Right, stay with Al Jazeera. We'll have more coverage on the mass protest due to take place in several Arab countries this Friday. We'll be live from Tahrir Square in Cairo, where thousands have gathered for Friday prayers. And it's full steam ahead for Chinese defense spending. We'll find out who feels threatened by a better equipped People's Liberation Army. Now, before we go, a quick reminder, you can keep up to date with all the news on our website. There it is on your screen. The address, of course, aljazeera.net/English. That's aljazeera.net/English. All the latest updates and analysis on events unfolding in Libya. Of course, stay with us here on Al Jazeera.
An uprising on the streets, showing no sign of relenting. Protesters united in their defiance of the regime. As demonstrations continued for a 3rd week, President Mubarak remained unmoved. But how much longer could he ignore the demands of his people and hold on to power? In a day-by-day account, we look at the events that changed Egypt, from those that witnessed them firsthand. Fall of Mubarak, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Now there's one place to discover the whole story, aljazeera.net/English.
We bring you the story from every side and every angle. aljazeera.net/English.
Welcome to Al Jazeera's news centre here in Doha. I'm Darren Jordan. As is becoming the norm here in the Arab world, Friday prayers are being followed by more demonstrations calling for change. They come amid continued tension in Libya, where uprising continues. Pro-Gaddafi forces have launched a new air raid in the east of the country as protesters regroup. Thousands of migrant workers are still waiting to go home. Many are stuck without any help from their governments. Meanwhile, thousands of Egyptians are gathering in Cairo's Tahrir Square, calling for constitutional change there. The country's new Prime Minister, Issam Sharaf, is expected to address the crowds soon. And in Tunisia, where an uprising led to the ousting of the president in January, the caretaker Prime Minister has been giving his first speech.
I believe that the new Tunisian government, which is God's willing, will be formed in 2 days' time with the approval of the president of the state. It will be a government that considered its role to bear the responsibility of that heavy burden, but willingly, in order to work together for the sake of the country and its progress day after day.
Well, let's return to our top story now, the uprising in Libya. The humanitarian crisis caused by the conflict is worsening. 180,000 people have fled the country and thousands more, especially from the Indian subcontinent, are still waiting to leave. The UN says more than 90,000 have fled to Tunisia. Nearly 80,000 have crossed into Egypt. Another 2,500 people have crossed at the Niger border too. But while agencies are warning of a growing humanitarian crisis for these refugees, thousands more people are stuck inside Libya. Tony Bertley sent this report from Benghazi.
A few possessions in their bags and the clothes on their backs. Migrant workers in Libya on the move, looking to escape somebody else's conflict. These feel destitute and abandoned. The lucrative jobs in an oil-rich country lost in the uprising. At the docks in Benghazi Thursday, yet another boat stands by to collect its human cargo. This time, 600 Syrians board the Captain Abdullah. But in recent days, vessels from China, Vietnam and Europe have come to collect its nationals.
أكيد شعور جميل يعني حدا ماشي على بلده بيكون شعوره جميل شعور جميل.
We've been here for 3 days, he says. It feels very good to go. At the peak, up to 10 boats a day were setting sail from here, with migrants desperate to flee the danger. More than 30,000 migrant workers have left from this port in the last week. The exodus is slowing, but still they're coming. Countries from all over the world have remembered their nationals, but there are a few, that have been forgotten. In a camp the other side of the harbour, the foreign workers who can't get out, either because they have no money or their governments don't care.
Many country people here, Indian, China, Turkey, but all people go back. But our Prime Minister is no helping.
They survive because of handouts and donations from Libyans, but it's a basic existence. The problems for these men are compounded by the fact they haven't been paid by their company, and that's hurting their families back home.
In some cases, literally dropped everything, including their documents in some cases. So they're travelling home empty-handed. Many are through remittances are supporting quite sizable families back home. And so it's going to have a huge knock-on effect.
There are more than 2,500 migrant workers here and another 1,000 in nearby camps, but that's what they know. It's estimated that the figure is much higher, perhaps by 3 or 4 times. Many workers, especially those from Africa, feel frightened.
Some of us, we are surviving. Some of us, we are dead now. Right now, we are looking for the solution.
That solution is being provided by international organisations now arriving in Benghazi.